worked a night shift at a quiet office building in the heart of the city. It's a lonely job, but I've grown accustomed to the loneliness. Most nights are uneventful, with nothing more than the sound of my footsteps echoing through the empty halls. But one night, everything changed. It was a chilly autumn evening, and I arrived at work just as the sun began to set. The office was already shrouded in darkness, the only light coming in from the street lamps outside. I settled into my desk, ready for another long night of paperwork and occasional phone calls. As hours ticked by, the stillness of the office became increasingly creepy. The silence was broken only by a distant hum of the city and the occasional creaking of the building settling. I found myself growing more and more restless, my eyes darting around the dimly lit room. At around midnight, a strange sensation washed over me, a feeling of being watched. I shook it off thinking my mind was just playing tricks on me, but as the minutes passed, the feeling intensified, becoming impossible to ignore. I decided to take a short break and make a cup of coffee in the kitchen. The familiar routine brought a sense of comfort, momentarily easing my anxiety. But as I turned my head back to my desk, I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye. My heart skipped a beat as I thought I saw a shadowy figure darting across a nearby cubicle. I froze in my tracks, my breath caught up in my throat. I strained my eyes, trying to make out any details, but the darkness obscured my view. I slowly made my way towards the cubicle, my footsteps barely audible. My mind raced with thoughts of potential intruders and the steps I should take to protect myself. As I approached the cubicle, the air grew thick with tension. The sound of my heartbeat echoed in my ears as I peered around the corner. To my relief, there was no one there. But the feeling of being watched lingered, intensifying the unease that gnawed at me. I resumed back to my office, trying to shake off the unease and convince myself that it was all in my head. But the unease refused to dissipate. Every creak and whisper of the building seemed amplified. The night grew thicker, and my nerves were stretched to their limit. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway outside. My breath caught in my throat as I strained to listen. The footsteps grew closer, and I could hear hushed whispers accompanying them. I reached for my phone, my hands trembling as I dialed the security office. Before I could speak, the line went dead. Panic hit me like a ton of bricks as I realized the gravity of the situation. Something was terribly wrong, and I was alone, cut off from help. In a desperate bid for safety, I decided to barricade myself in the office. I pushed desks and cabinets against the door, hoping to buy myself some time. But as I turned to face the room, I saw them. Shadowy figures emerging from the darkness. Fear consumed me as they closed in, their eyes gleaming in the dim light. They outnumbered me, and I knew I stood no chance against them. My mind raced, searching for an escape route, but the room offered no exit. As they advanced, I fought the paralyzing grip of fear. With every ounce of courage, I lunged towards the window, shattering the glass with a chair. I climbed out of the narrow ledge, clinging to the building's side. The cold night air bit at my skin as I made my way along the ledge. Inch by inch, I dared not to look down, focusing only on the distant street below. The intruders shouted from the shattered window, their threats muffled by the distance. I reached a nearby balcony and pulled myself to safety. I stumbled into the adjacent apartment, seeking refuge from the horrors I had just faced. Tears streamed down my face as I recounted the terrifying ordeal to the residents, who called the police. As I sat on their couch, trembling and exhausted, relief washed over me. The nightmare was over. The police arrived and investigated the office building, finding no trace of the intruders. It remained a mystery, an unsolved encounter. Since that night, I left the night shift behind. The experience forever etched in my memory, I remember the night like it was yesterday. I was working the night shift at a small convenience store, where the dimly lit aisles and the quiet hum of the refrigerators were my only company. It was a job that paid the bills, but little did I know that night would be one I would never forget. The clock ticked slowly as I scanned the empty store, my tired eyes struggling to stay awake. The silence was broken only by the occasional sound of a passing car outside. The night had a way of making everything feel creepy and unsettling. As I stood behind the counter, minutes turned into hours, and the store remained quiet. But just when I started to relax, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned my head towards the security monitor. My heart skipped a beat. There, on the screen, I saw a person lurking near the entrance of the store. My pulse quickened as I reached for the phone to call the police. I dialed the number, my voice barely above a whisper as I explained the situation. The operator assured me that help was on the way, but in that moment, time seemed to stand still. I was terrified as I watched the figure approach the entrance, slowly pushing the door open. I could feel the weight of their presence, an unsettling energy filling the air. I knew I had to be cautious, so I hid behind the counter, my heart pounding in my chest. The person entered the store, moving silently through the aisles. The darkness seemed to surround them, shrouding their intentions. I could hear the muffled sound of their footsteps, growing closer with each passing moment. I held my breath, praying that the police would arrive soon. The minutes felt like an eternity, the silence broken only by the sound of my own heartbeat. The person seemed to sense my presence, their footsteps becoming more deliberate, more purposeful. And then, as if on cue, the blaring sirens of the police cars pierced the night. I was relieved as I heard the screech of tires and the shouts of officers outside. The person froze, caught in the spotlight of their arrival. I cautiously peered over the encounter, my eyes widening in disbelief. It was someone I recognized, a former coworker who had been recently let go. I couldn't understand why they would be here, in the dead of night, acting so strangely. The police swiftly apprehended the person, their hands bound with handcuffs. They were escorted out of the store, their gaze fixated on me with an unsettling intensity. It made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, the realization sinking in that I narrowly escaped a potentially dangerous situation. As the police conducted their investigation, I took a moment to collect myself. The night had shaken me to my core, reminding me of the vulnerability and the unpredictability of the world. Working the night shift would never be the same again. The quiet hours were no longer peaceful, but instead filled with cautious anticipation. I only worked the night shift for a few more months. Eventually I switched to the day shift. After that experience, I will never work the night shift again. My name is Ian, and I'm 23 years old. I worked the night shift at a small gas station on the outskirts of town. It was a quiet area. I've heard of rumors of strange occurrences during the night, but I never really paid attention to them until that one fateful evening. As the sun set and the darkness enveloped the surroundings, I prepared myself for another long night. Time passed slowly, my eyelids grew heavy, and I fought to stay awake. I heard a faint sound coming from the back of the store. It was a soft scraping noise, like something being dragged across the floor. I cautiously made my way to the back, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound grew louder with each step, sending shivers down my spine. As I reached the storage room, the scraping noise abruptly stopped. I hesitated for a moment, my hands trembling as I turned the doorknob. The room was pitch black, the only light coming from the faint glow of the moon outside. I fumbled for the light switch, but it failed to illuminate the room. Panic began to set in as I groped my way through the darkness. I felt a cold breeze brush against my face, I froze, my senses on high alert. There was no logical explanation for a draft in a closed storage room. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own breathing. My hands grazed against various objects. My fingers brushed against something wet and sticky. I recoiled in horror, realizing it was a puddle of something resembling blood. My mind raced with possibilities. Was there an intruder in the store? Had someone been hurt? The thought of danger lurking in the dark made me absolutely terrified. As I stood there paralyzed by fear, I heard a faint whisper from the darkness. It was a hushed voice, barely audible, but filled with a malevolent tone. My instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like they were encased in cement. A loud crash broke the silence, jolting me back to reality. It came from the front of the store, where the cash register was located. Panic surged through my veins as I mustered every ounce of courage and sprinted towards the sound. I burst into the main area of the store, only to be met with a sight that would haunt me forever. The cash register was smashed open, money scattered across the floor. But what chilled me to the bone was the man standing by the broken register, a menacing smile on their face. Before I could react, they lunged at me, a knife glinting in their hand. I dodged their attack, stumbling backward. Fear fueled my adrenaline as I fought for survival, desperately trying to defend myself against the intruder. A fierce struggle ensued, each move filled with desperation and determination. It was a battle of life and death, the outcome uncertain. In the chaos, I managed to land a blow, and I knocked the man out cold. Gasping for breath, I called the police, my voice shaky as I reported the incident. Relief washed over me as I heard the sirens approaching the distance. The arrival of the police brought an end to that nightmarish ordeal. That experience has absolutely terrified me. After that shift, I told my manager that I quit. I was never working the night shift again. I didn't sleep very well for the next few months. I eventually found a new job, and obviously with a daytime shift. With that experience still etched in my mind, I get extremely paranoid every time I enter a gas station. But I'm thankful that I'm still alive. But who knows? Maybe things would have turned out differently that night, and I wouldn't be here telling you this story.